I want to tell you about a buddy of mine who makes $1.5 million a month, and I want to tell you how he does it. And the crazy thing about what I'm going to tell you is not what you're expecting at all, and how he told me he makes it. In fact, when he told me, I wasn't really surprised. I'd already heard the answer before. We have access to the same information. He didn't know anything that I didn't know, but there was a key difference why he was successful and I wasn't. And that's what I want to share in this video. And looking back now in hindsight, it's actually pretty fucking simple. And I know you're going to say, oh, $1.5 million a month, you're not making that. Yeah, I know I'm not. But you want to know what? I fucking know how, and it's not as hard as you think. Listen, I used to think the same as you until I met this guy. He legit not only showed me how I could do the same, but I actually know how to make more than him. Even though I'm not making 1.5 million per month yet, because by the end of this video, you'll know how it's actually not that hard. But I used what he told me to grow my consultancy from 0 to 6 figures per year, which is still a lot because I come from a working class family. Nobody in my family had ever started a business. In fact, I'd never seen that much fucking money in my life. So thanks to his advice, not only was I able to grow my business, but now I'm in the process of starting my second business. And I'm using his advice to get whatever the fuck I want out of life. And that's what I want to share with you. You're probably wondering, who the fuck is this guy? What's his name? And out of respect for him being so modest and his privacy, we're just going to call him Steve. But firstly, how did I meet Steve? Well, you've probably heard me talk about early on in my journey, I was trying to crack the whole make money online, internet marketing stuff, and I was fucking terrible at it, right? What would happen is I spent the first few years spending money on self-education, buying all these courses that gave me no self-sufficiency. What they would do is they would teach me some sort of tactic. I would use it for a while. It would be a sporadic method, and then it would either get oversaturated or it would stop working. And then the money that I made, I would have to spend trying to find predictability with another tactic. And I'd say if we'd done a profit and loss, I was definitely working for the first 4 years way below what the minimum wage is. Like, that's the fucked up part. You give up working 40 hours a week to end up working over 100 for less than minimum wage. Like, people would think you have a screw loose if they knew how much money you really made. Eventually, after spending about 75 grand on courses in self-education, I ended up figuring out a tactic that was short term, but it allowed me to deliver value and make myself a modest wage, enough to keep the lights on for a while. But at the time, I wasn't sure how much longer this was going to last. And for so long, I wanted to make 6 figures per year, because up until this point, I'd been homeless twice, and I knew, okay, 6 figures per year is enough to get me a steady place to live. I'd be able to pay myself enough, be able to take some of the stresses off my shoulders that I've been dealing with for, 2-3 years previous. I'd be able to look after those closest to me, and I'd be able to live life on my terms. Essentially, making 6 figures per year for me, anyways, was going to get me out of survival mode and give me predictability and security, knowing that next month was going to be fine. Because up until that point, every month was a fucking roller coaster, and you just feel like you're running on this treadmill that's never gonna end. And I think that's the one thing that nobody talks about with entrepreneurship. And I didn't feel like I could reach out to people for help or talk about my struggle. The reason being is because the entrepreneurship community, again, I hate that word entrepreneur, but the entrepreneurship community is all about flexing. It's very egotistical. It's all about perception, how you're perceived. Oh, look at me. I have this. I'm the fucking man. And I can tell you this, most entrepreneurs that you see online, that you see on Instagram, they're not doing 1/10 as good as what you think they are. And I can tell you that for a fact. Why? Because I used to do the exact same. I got caught up in this social competition that was so toxic, and if I had got out of that sooner, killed my ego, I would have accelerated at a way faster rate. But look, it's easy to say in hindsight, right? So anyways, I'm making just enough to pay the bills, pay the Wi-Fi, get myself some food. I'm working a part-time job. And then what happens is, this little fucking tactic that I figured out stopped working. And in an instant, my income went to zero. And to save you the sub story, I lost my apartment, all my money, had to sell my car, and moved in with my girlfriend and her parents. I had no fucking clue how I was going to navigate out of the situation because I'd spent 75 grand and all I'd got in return was short-term tactics. I didn't really have any self-sufficient knowledge. I guess you could say I was too short-sighted, and that cost me a lot. And that was probably the lowest point of my life, but it sparked a turning point and probably a pivotal moment that set me out on the journey that led me to where I am today, to find predictability, not just for myself, but for those who were counting on me. So I'm trying to get out of this hole that I'm in, and nothing seems to be clicking, right? This is in the weeks that followed. And then one day, I get a text message off a buddy of mine, legit multi-millionaire, not Steve, a different guy. And I'd seen the money in his bank account, knew he was legit. He'd helped me make like 20 grand before in the space of 2 weeks with some dropship and stuff. And he'd text me. He said something like, there's a mastermind event coming up. I want you to go. I think it'd be a good idea for you to network. The guys are just like me and you. And I'd never been in a room like this before. And I knew if I could get into a room like this, my thoughts were, okay, I'm the type of person, if you give me an inch, I'll run a mile. I knew that if I could go there, find the common denominators and essentially find out what the secret was, then I'd probably be able to reassert some power and control over my life and get the security, right? But here's the problem. It's not fucking cheap to get into these rooms. It costs a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of money. And I think my friend didn't know that. I think maybe he thought three things. Number one, he thought I was doing better than I was because I said I was too afraid to talk about my struggles, which is a shame. Number two, he could have known about my situation just from being able to read me because he's a very intelligent guy and he felt sorry for me. Or number three, I'd done him a favor when he wasn't a millionaire and maybe he just felt indebted and wanted to repay that. So I'm trying to come up with ways to get the money, and I just can't see a way of doing it. I'm telling Chloe I don't want to text my buddy. I feel ashamed. I feel like a fucking loser. And she goes off for about an hour and she comes back and she says to me, Callum, I'm going to give you a lend of the money. Now, this was a couple of grand. Bear in mind, I had fucking nothing. She said, I'm going to loan you the money. I'm going to cover the costs. You're going to go to the mastermind. And she said, you can circle it back to me when you make it. Now, this will just show, this girl is one in a million. She was in college at the time, had fuck all money, was already in debt from, student loans or whatever loans she had, and she was willing to place her bets on me. So if I was to say that I got to where I am today on my own, that would be the biggest lie ever. She placed her bets on me when she had nothing and I had nothing. She gave me everything. So that same day, Chloe literally sent me the money, and I text my buddy. I said, bro, I'm in, right? Playing it off, this act. I'm still a fucking big man. But really, I'm going to the event in disguise to find the fucking secret. I fly out to the event on behalf of Chloe, obviously. I'm not going to tell them that. Catching up with my buddy, and I'm saying to myself, right, this is my opportunity. I'm going to bump heads with as many multi-millionaires as possible. I'm going to find the common denominators so I know what the secret is. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't fly back to fucking Ireland with no answer, not knowing what it is. And if I do, I'm going to have to jack all this fucking, this big dream that I had in my mind. I'm going to have to jack it all in, go get a job, which is every entrepreneur's worst nightmare, okay? I wanted to assert power over my life from when I was a teen. I wanted to have control over my income. Obviously, that's subjective to the individual and our individual goals, but that's what I wanted. And fucking going to a 9 to 5 after everything I've been through was like hell. Anyways, second day of the mastermind. It's the morning time. I hadn't slept the night before. I'm sitting there having breakfast on my own. Most people are still in bed. And one guy comes over to me and he says, can I sit down beside you? I'm like, of course you can. And he says, what's your name? I said, Callum. What's your name? He says, Steve. Now, I had no fucking clue who he was at this point. And we ended up sitting down that morning and we didn't talk about business once. We were actually talking about golf. We were talking about fitness. He was quite rational in how he taught, very logical. I just felt like our values aligned on a lot of stuff. So over the course of like the next, I would say 48 to 72 hours, me and Steve were fucking laughing. We were joking. But again, we hadn't really talked about business yet. And I wasn't aware of this because I was still on the mission of searching for the secret. And we were maybe 3 days into the mastermind and I still hadn't found the answer. I'm kind of thinking, fuck, like there's probably 2 days left here. I can't fly back to Ireland and not have something for Chloe. I need to have this figured out. And if I didn't figure it out, by the time I got home, I knew she would leave me. I wouldn't be able to pay back the money and I would feel like the biggest letdown ever. Yeah, so I had to get to work. My goal was I wanted to figure out something that would work in marketing because that's what I'd spent all my money on. I was passionate about marketing even though I was terrible at it. And I wanted to find someone who'd built a real marketing business, something innovative, not some bullshit SMMA type stuff that I'd seen before, but something that was legit, a real business that could make me 6 figures per year. That's what I wanted. Here's where it gets pretty interesting. Well, interesting to me. One night I'm sitting there with Steve. We're having dinner, right? We're fucking laughing our heads off about some bullshit. And it dawns on me. I'd spent 2-3 days going around picking everyone's brains subtly. But I'd never asked Steve what he done. I'd never actually said, hey, how do you make money? What business do you run? So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what the fuck? I've spent all this time with him and I don't know what the guy does. So I said, Steve, what do you actually do? And he said, I'm in the online education space. So basically what he does is he partners with experts, he runs the business operations, and he takes 50%. Now, I'd heard of people doing this before, and I knew it was extremely profitable because I, for one, had given all my money to people in the online education space. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, fuck, I wonder how much money this guy makes. So I said, Steve, if you don't mind me asking, do you do well? How much would you earn in a business like this? And he says, oh, Callum, I do well. I do okay for myself, real modest, wouldn't give an exact answer. And I'm like, Steve, come on, give me a ballpark. I don't need exact numbers, but is it a good industry? I'm just trying to get an idea of how much money this guy makes. And he's like, oh no, look, man, I do okay for myself. And I'm poking at him, I'm pushing, and he won't tell me. I don't want to, be too pushy. So I just started chancing my arm casually throughout the night, seeing if he'll tell me, and no luck. And then the dinner's over and we're staying back, we're having more laughs, and he's having a whiskey. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna ask one more time. My curiosity was killing me. I was like, I need to know. I'm gonna ask one more time. He's had a drink, maybe he'll tell me now. So I say, Steve, come on, man. I'm like, just fucking tell me, how much money do you make? And there was about 10 seconds, I'll never forget it, pure silence. He looks me dead in the eye, big grin on his face, and he says, you really want to know how much money I make? I'm sitting there, I'm like, Steve, come on, fucking tell me, man. I remember he looked me dead in the eye, straight face, and says, I make $1.5 million a month. Just like that, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, there's no fucking way you're making 1.5 million a month. Now, not because I don't believe him, right? I've just never heard of anybody make that type of money. So I didn't know what to think. And I remember he didn't move an eyebrow and he repeats the same line again. He says, Callum, I make $1.5 million every month. And I'm sitting there now and I'm like, fuck, this guy might actually be dead serious. Maybe he actually does make $1.5 million a month. And he pulls out his phone, didn't even have to ask him. Pulls out his phone, opens up his merchant account, shows me 1.5 million last month. I'm sitting there thinking, what the fuck? Legit, I swear I'm not even making this up. It was like a scene from The Wolf of Wall Street. I remember saying to him, I said, Steve, you show me how to make 1.5 million a month, I will fucking quit everything I'm doing right now. I'll come to America. I'll work for you. I swear to God, that's exactly what I said. It must have just been subconsciously in my head from The Wolf of Wall Street, but that's literally what I said. And I think he realized, he said, oh fuck, this kid's not actually messing. And I don't know whether he felt for me a little bit, maybe because we'd bonded all week outside of business, maybe at this point I had told him about my situation, how I wasn't doing so well, so maybe he felt for me in that way, felt sorry for me. I was very different than most people, I was very transparent and authentic, and I don't know, maybe he just wanted to help me out. And he says, Callum, you know what, I like you. He says, I'm going to tell you how I done it. I'm sitting there thinking, what the fuck is going on here? This guy's making $1.5 million a month. I've never fucking seen or heard anything like this before in my life. My phone is dead. I have no notepad. And this guy's about to reveal the fucking holy grail. He's about to give me the secret. I'm just thinking, how the fuck am I going to remember this? So I'm planning, before he even says it, I'm planning, right, as soon as Steve's done, you're going to run to your hotel room and you're going to write down everything you can fucking remember. I swear to God, you can't make this up. I'm sitting there. I'm starting to sweat. And he says, right, I'm going to tell you. He said, it's simple. And in my head, I'm thinking, all right, Steve, like, fucking simple for you. 1.5 mil a month. I can't even fucking pay myself a wage, right? And he says, here's what I do. He says, I make really good YouTube ads. I send the traffic to a funnel. He said, they watch a webinar, they book a coaching call, and we sell them our program. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, and like, what else? You know, I've heard this fucking probably 100 times since 2017. I'm like, Steve, I already knew that. Like, come on, like, what's the fucking real secret, you know? And he cuts me off and he says, Callum, I have to stop you there. He said, I'm not the smartest person in this room. He said, in fact, I'm not the smartest person at this event. And he said, from talking to you, it seems like you actually know more about marketing than I do. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what the fuck is this guy getting at? So he continues and he says, Callum, you don't need any more fucking information. He didn't curse, by the way. I'm just doing that for emphasis. This guy was way too modest to curse. But he says, you don't need any more fucking information. He said, you actually have all the answers already. He said, you know everything that I know. He said, you don't lack resources. The reason why I'm making 1.5 mil per month and, you know, you're not having the success that you want, he said, is because you got the information and you didn't act on it. He said, I spend all my time implementing that information and the plan that I got. And then he said, everyone's here at this event. They're looking for some sort of magic secret. They're looking for information. He said, Google has all the fucking answers. He said, it's not information that we lack. It's the ability to execute. He said, once you find a winning game plan and you model what works, you have all the common denominators. He said, and you formulate a game plan, you need to spend as much time as possible executing, refining, and improving. That's where everyone drops the ball. That's the difference between me and them. And he told me the exact formula. He said, I found someone who had already done what I wanted to do, right? It was proven. He said, I got them to teach me. The second thing I done was, I then modeled the 10 most successful people in the space, their YouTube ads, their funnels, their webinars. I went through their sales processes. He said, once I found all the commonalities, I put it into a game plan and I executed. He said, I modeled success at a fundamental level. I look at what works, what's already proven, I model it, I put it into a game plan, and I spend all my time executing. The only difference whether I'm going to be successful or not is whether I do what I know I have to do. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, holy fuck. And then he goes on to say, he said, Callum, he said, I don't even need anything fancy. He said, you could lock me in a closet as long as I have Wi-Fi, as long as I have my laptop. He said, I can get it done. This guy's telling me he can make 1.5 mil a month from his closet. And I'm here telling myself, oh, you know, you're not going to be successful until you get the new MacBook Pro. You're not going to be successful until you get a new apartment. Oh, you know, that course you bought, that course was bullshit. Oh, you're not going to be successful until all this fucking bullshit. I realized there and then that I was never going to get the answer externally. Why? Because I already had it. It wasn't a lack of information. I was afraid to call myself out on my own bullshit. And as long as I continued to look elsewhere, I was shifting blame away from what was really wrong. And that was me. I was the variable in the equation all along. I mean, there's a million ways to get your fucking answer. Google, YouTube, ChatGPT. It's not information that we lack. And I knew when I first met him, I said he was very rational. And he broke it down to me very logically. And it always sticks with me. He said, if you done everything you were supposed to do, you would be where you're supposed to be. But you didn't do it. He said you can't cheat physics, and instead of pulling yourself up on your own bullshit, you decided to blame the external. So I'm sitting there wondering, I'm like, this is fucking fascinating me. Like, tell me about a time when you fucked up before you knew all this stuff. And again, looked me dead in the eye, I swear to God. And he said, Callum, I don't fucking lose. He said, Winners win because they do what they know they have to do regardless of how they feel. He said losers lose because they fucking look elsewhere. They blame this, they blame that, they wait on the right circumstances, and they blame everything else but themselves. Then he actually did say one thing was pissing him off. He said that he'd been stuck on 1.5 million per month for almost a year and a half, and that was really pissing him off. I mean, talk about first world problems. But before we finished up that night, he reiterated the same point again. He said, Callum, losing isn't in the equation. He said, if I study the best and I understand at a fundamental level what makes them the best, I formulate a game plan. He said, I know that information is sound. The only difference between winning and losing is on me. And he said, I don't fucking lose. In fact, to finish up the whole point on Steve and his philosophy and what he taught me, he said that if he lost it all in the morning, he told me he would not lose a wink of sleep. He said he'd be able to make it all back again tomorrow. And that was when I realized why winners win. That was when I realized why losers lose. Because winners do what they know they have to do regardless of how they feel. They model what works. They put themselves in a position to win where they can execute regardless of the circumstances. You see, the problem with me was, number one, it wasn't a lack of information. I had all the game plans. Yeah, for a while, okay, I wasn't in the best position mentally and physically, but I checked that box eventually and something still wasn't working. Why? Because it was the third thing that I lacked, the ability to execute regardless of the circumstances. That was my issue. And it's that last point that makes the difference. Everyone is fucking waiting on perfect. Everyone is waiting on the circumstances to be right. Whereas winners, they don't give a fuck. They execute whether it's fucking raining, snowing, you get hit by a bus. They don't give a shit. Whereas losers wait for perfect, and perfect is never coming, so you never end up fucking winning at all. And you've probably heard that saying, you know, the one where they say if a millionaire or a billionaire lost all their money, it wouldn't take them a long time to get it all back. Well, now I actually understand why with what Steve said. And the reason why that's true, and let's say Elon Musk, if he lost it all, how he'd be able to make it all back, is because, number one, he has the fundamental knowledge. He knows what to do and he's certain that the game plan works. And secondly, because he's certain that the game plan works, he's willing to execute regardless of the circumstances, whereas most people are paralyzed by fear. If you look at winning as a fundamental process, it's universal. And that's the one thing that all winners have in common is they know it's just physics. If they don't do what they know they have to do, it'll never happen. And that's the thing. You can't cheat physics. The more time you spend avoiding the work, well, you know, once you're aware, you know it's never going to happen and you're only wasting your time. Anyways, to sum up, I finished the event and I went back to Ireland. I paid Chloe back her money and I scaled my marketing consultancy from 0 to 6 figures. Right? We delivered a great service for our clients, but more importantly, I was able to reassert the power over my life and get the predictability month to month that I wanted. Now I look at my time in 2 zones. I have the creative planning and revision zone, and then I have the execution zone, and I like to spend about 80 to 90% of my time now executing because I know that's what makes a difference. And remember this, right? The price is always going to be paid. It pays to be a fucking winner. But regardless of what side you choose, it's going to be paid either way. So you might as well go on the fucking winning side, right? Other than that, I found a great friend in Steve. I use that same philosophy to get anything I want out of life. And it's funny actually, because at the start of this video and when I went to the event, I said, you know, if someone gives me an inch, I'll take a mile. And that's exactly what happened. That philosophy that Steve put forward, we could say, I took that. I applied it in other areas of my life, and now I'm using it with the new company that we're launching, Winners Win Performance Company, or winnerswin.com. It's a performance company that exists solely for the reason to help people assert power over their lives, okay? People who recognize that it's on them. They want to stack the odds in their favor and they want to get shit done. So I'm not sure, maybe by the time you're watching this, the beta community with all the tools, coaching and resources, that'll be live and you can go check that out. If it's not there, you know, you can go check out my social media and stay in the loop on that. That's at Cal Roach. And I want to end on this note. Remember when I said that my phone was dead and I didn't have a notepad to write down how Steve told me he makes 1.5 million per month. Well, when I got back to my hotel room, I didn't take notes. What I did was, when I got back to Dublin the following day after I landed, I went to a tattoo shop and I got it tattooed on my arm so I'd never forget. And I just want to say thanks, pal. I appreciate it.